What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Librarians of Solana podcast. My name is T. I am one of the librarians here in Solana in the world of Wraith. This week, we have a little bit of a different pod for you. You can see we are inside the library today. And for this episode, instead of talking about news or strategy, we are going to instead review some gameplay footage from one of my games in the Flesh and Blood Competitive Team League. My team and I, SEAL Team Lotus, are participating in this league hosted by Tyler Broughton and the Flesh and Blood Competitive Hub. It is a team event where teams around the world can submit their players and their decks in order to compete against each other for guts and glory. And so this week we were playing against a team located in Hong Kong, and I was paired against Allen Lau. And I played against him in this league. The hero that I played is Bravo Star of the Show, and I opted to go for David Rude's control style list that he piloted to a top 8 finish not too long ago in the Calling in Indianapolis. So today we're going to review that footage, talk about the match, and talk through some of the plays and the decision trees that I had while we were participating. That way, if you're interested in playing a Bravo style deck like this, you can see a little bit into the mind of somebody who is playing it, and you might see some lines that you might not have thought of yourself. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. Here we have my match versus Allen. So at the beginning of the match, we revealed the heroes that we were on. I was playing Bravo, and he was playing Chane. I thought that he was on Prism, and this was very not correct, obviously, because that's not Prism, that's Chane. So I opted to go, I opted to go for a little bit of an interesting loadout. I went with Crown of Seeds, Fyendal's Tunic, Crater Fist, and I did Nullrune Boots here. And then for my weapon equipment, I did Winter's Wail and Rampart of the Ram's Head. There's some discussion about Stalagmite, but David was not playing Stalagmite in his list, and I ended up liking the shield that I chose a lot more. It was way more efficient at blocking, and it came up a lot during the game. As for sideboarding itself, I end up taking out 3 Awakenings and 2 Pulverize, and I put in the 5 defense reactions, 2 Staunch, and 3 Turn Timber, all red. Going forward, if I were to play this matchup again, I would have also cut 3 of my red Earth attacks, the ones that block for 2, in order to play the 3 Mulches that are in the sideboard of this list. That way we can have more block 3s in the deck, and increase the block power, because this matchup is about fatigue. So I ended up going for a Slim 60, and it plays. You have to fatigue them, you have to block a lot. So having a lot of those block 2s that generically fill up the core of the Bravo deck depletes some of the value you can do and some of the block potential you have through this game. So at this point, we're deciding who goes first. I've already sideboarded. Probably should have asked first, or we probably should have determined first before that, but I think the deck list plays the same regardless of if you're going first or second, at least into the Chane matchup. You just want to defend a lot. Allen rolls a 7, and then I roll not a 7. So Allen ends up getting the choice, and he chooses to go first, which gives him that first shackle of the game. It's a pretty important thing. It also leaves me without an arsenal going into his or for the very first turn. So it puts me a little bit behind on that Crown of Seeds value. Allen's loadout was an Arcanite Skullcap, Carrion Husk, Grasp of the Arcanite, and Spellbound Creepers, a pretty standard loadout. For the first turn, he just pitches a red Ghostly and a red Riftbind in order to make a Rune Chant, and then he moves to Arsenal. So I get to keep this hand that you're looking at here of Channel Lake Frigid, Blue Frostfang, Blue Breakground, and Blue Icy Encounter. This doesn't let me reroll into things like potential Starvo activation, but I feel like this was still a very powerful hand. Going over to me, I tick up my Tunic, I play out this Channel Lake Frigid, and then I attack with an Icy Hammer. He blocks with 2 cards. Channel obviously stays around. Sorry, I had the sound up on the stream for myself. So Channel obviously stays around because I pitched 2 ice cards that turn and I arsenal the Breakground. On his turn, he flips his first Shackle. It's going to be a blue Bounding Demigon. This doesn't apply too much pressure, but it gives him a chance to play more cards out of his banish, even though he blocked with 2 cards on the very first turn. I will say now, you will see me fiddle around with the camera angle and with the mouse on Tabletop Simulator. I apologize in advance. I cannot sit still whenever I play a game, so I always have to be moving something. You'll see me like flick my cards digitally. You'll see me draw the boxes with the mouse on the table. If this bothers you, you might want to click out of the video now, because it happens a lot throughout the game. He is restricted in what he can do on this very first turn because I do have that Chane Lake Frigid out. From our hand, even if we Crown of Seeds, there's nothing we can turn it into, so it's a little bit unfortunate we can't keep that Chane Lake Frigid around for a second turn, but Allen pitches a blue Vexing Malice to activate Shackle, and then plays a Belittle. Belittle already has Go again, and Shackle doesn't affect Belittle. This is just so that he doesn't break the chain multiple times, so that he can still play around the Rampart of the Ram's Head, even though it's on the table. So Belittle, reveal Belittle, grab Minnowism, just for more pitch so that he can continue doing things. So I end up pitching, activating Crown, preventing the Rune Chant, and then blocking for 3. He comes in with a Rosetta. I'm going to be able to fully block this, or just use some of the cards in my hand. So I use Shield and Crown to fully block it and keep my hand. He hadn't played a non-attack, so it was just coming in for a friendly 2 physical. After that, I look at my hand. I want to hang on to this Pulse, and I want to come in with a little bit of pressure, so I end up swinging in with the Winter's Wail, just for a soft 4, no Frostbite on it. I'm going to Arsenal the Staunch Response here, that way we have that defense reaction in our arsenal. It gives us a 5th card to play. We don't want to crown it away usually, we want to use it to block, but it didn't take too long before we ended up needing to use it to block, or getting to use it for effective value. So let's fast forward a little bit through that turn. You can see the Staunches in our arsenal now. Opponent comes in playing Nimblism, starting off strong. So his next attack is going to get +3, and then he plays a Shadow Puppetry. This is +4 on an attack, so that bounding is going to be coming in for 6, even though it's only a blue. It does have that scary on hit, so I'm going to want to block it out. In this position, I have the option to either block with 2 cards, the Crippling Crush and the Spinal Crush, because I probably want to hold on to that Pulse, or at least not block with it. I want it to stay in the deck, and that Blink doesn't block. So from here, I end up deciding just to block with the Staunch Response. It's an efficient block. It leaves me with a mana floating, so I can still block out physical and prevent one of the Arcane off of the Rosetta swing afterwards. I take 1 damage going down to 39, but I've already got my opponent at 35. He took that Vanilla Hammer last turn. So as long as you can keep your life total in roughly the same range and try to stay high as you can, you're going to be able to apply a lot of pressure. He did shackle the Rosetta Thorn, so he comes in with a Belittle afterwards. I end up opting just to block with my Spinal Crush. I'm probably not going to be attacking this game, so these attacks are just block 3s in this position. I block with the Spinal Crush. My next turn, I tick up my Tunic, Arsenal, the Pulse of Candlehold, and then pass back. My hand, you can't see it here, but it is blue Heaven's Claw, blue Autumn's Touch, another Spinal, and another Cripple. He starts by pitching an Art of War and then coming into another Art of War from Arsenal. This is going to be a pretty scary turn because he is going to choose the Plus and the Banish. I put a die on the Art of War so that we don't forget, and to represent that extra damage, and he banishes none other than Riftbind. That means that there's probably going to be a scary attack coming, either now or in the near future. Allen activates the Shackle, uses his floating mana, and then comes in with an Unhallowed. On the very first turn of the game, he blocked with a Howl from Beyond, and he ends up putting that on the bottom of his deck. I opt to activate Crown of Seeds, drawing myself into a blue Winter's Bite, and then I believe I block with a card plus the Rampart of the Ram's Head here. Oh, it's for 5. Yeah, I use a card, Rampart of the Ram's Head, and the Crown Shield to not take anything off of this attack. I ended up keeping the Spinal Crush in my hand, because if I do end up randomly getting to cast one of these cards, I am most likely to cast this Spinal Crush instead of a Cripple. My thought process is, if I end up coming back to my turn, I can Arsenal this Spinal Crush and then pitch the Winter's Bite to come in with the Hammer. And then I can put that Spinal Crush back into my deck in the off chance that I get to play it sometime after that Carrion Husk is no longer on the table. You don't want to take a bunch of damage just to come in with an attack and get Carrion Husked, even if it makes them use it, because you'll probably take more off of that one attack than they will over Blood Debt through the course of the game using that Carrion Husk. The relevant part of the Spinal Crush is the Crush effect, and being that it's only 9, you're only coming in for 3 damage off of that Carrion Husk, meaning that you don't get the full value of Crush. Allen shackles to give himself an extra action point. Allen activates Creepers, playing Nimblism, now having 2 action points. Sorry, I apologize. I misspoke there. And then he comes in with this Riftbind that we banished off of the Art of War. This is coming in for 8 points of damage. 3 from the Nimblism, 3 from the Rift, 1 from the Rift ability, and 1 from the Art of War. This is a big attack, and I will take some damage here. So I take 2 off of the Riftbind, then he comes in with the Swarming Gloomveil. I take the 4, and I take the... He's only made 1 shackle, so the Swarming Gloomveil does not have the on-hit. I use my floating mana, prevent 1 of the Arcane from the Rosetta Thorn, and block the 2 physical with the Crater Fist. This leaves me back to my turn with 1 card. I think for a little bit about if I want to hammer here. If I hammer, I'm going to apply some pressure, get a Frostbite on him. It might change what he does on his turn. I end up deciding that it's not worth it and just to Arsenal. That was an opportune time to do it if I was going to, because his Skullcap would have been off, meaning that he probably just blocks with Skullcap, Grasp, and Boots if he doesn't plan on keeping the Boots around. I end up deciding that he probably doesn't block with Boots, probably not worth it, just better to block as much damage as I can, considering that I'm already down by 5 in this matchup. He comes back to his turn, off of 4 shackles, flips 3 playables. Little scary. Shadow Averser, Ghostly Visit, and Abounding Demigon. Our hand, looking like a couple of 2 blocks, a 3 block, and a defense reaction. Defense reactions cost the mana, so it's harder to play those, and we don't even have an Earth card, so we can't fuse. Opponent without shackling comes in with the Shadow Averser. From this position, I decide to pitch and activate my shield because I know he's going to break the chain later in the turn with the making a shackle ability, so I can pump that shield up to 2, and I'll just take 1 here. I'll go to 29, and my shield will be at counter 1. He then immediately breaks the chain by activating that shackle, and that opens back up my shield for just that exact opportunity. He comes in with Ghostly Visit. I respond by activating with Crown of Seeds. It lets me draw a card, and then I get to see exactly what I want to do here. So this does have Go again because of the shackle from Chane, and it's only coming in for 4. I think about my turn for a second, look at this Channel Lake Frigid, and decide that soon I want to put this on the table. I block for 4 on the second Ghostly Visit that he plays. Sorry, this was not the turn that I played the Channel Lake Frigid. I apologize. This game was crazy, and there's a lot of interesting plays. I block with that Channel Lake Frigid. That's the second Channel Lake Frigid from my deck, the one we played earlier, and the one I just blocked with. Looking at this hand, I know I'm going to come in with a Frosty Hammer for 4, and then put this Turn Timber in my arsenal. Having those defense reactions in your arsenal is the best place to have them. It's the only way you really get to block with them, and then it's essentially like having a 5-card hand to block with. He takes the 4, makes a Frostbite, and that decision was very fast, so it's kind of scary that he did that. I end up arsenaling that Turn Timber just like I said, and draw into another Channel Lake Frigid. This is the reason that I thought that I had the Channel Lake Frigid earlier. We're already at Shackle 5, so this is kind of scary. If I'm going to put that Channel Lake Frigid down on the table, it's going to take me a good whiff on those shackles, and just like that, it was a complete whiff on Shackle 5. Putting him at 4 cards in hand, 2 cards that he can play from Banish, and a Frostbite. He ends up pitching for 3 to make a Rune Chant, and then pitches to go all in on this one attack with the Riftbind. So this is for 8 because that Captain's Call is blue, so it's not affecting the Riftbind. It only affects the mana cost 0. So it's probably going to buff this Bounding Demigon later in the turn. I see this, I pitch for the Arcane, leaving me with 2 floating, and I've got this Turn Timber in my arsenal still. Conveniently, if I fuse it off of this Pulse, it's going to be for 8. And I do. And then Allen comes back with this for 6. At the time, I thought he had just missed his Captain's Call. I did not realize that it was a blue Captain's Call. I wasn't considering it. He said 8. I said, okay, you probably just missed your Riftbind trigger. That's what was going through my mind. Then he comes in for 6 with this Bounding Demigon. It's a little tough. He did lose his Spellbound Creepers the turn before because he wasn't able to deal arcane damage to me. So we know that the Spellbound Creepers aren't going to be a problem for the rest of the game, and that's going to be a very useful tool. From this position, I want to be able to arsenal a card and put this Chane Lake down, so I just use my Tunic to block with the shield and take 5. I take a little bit of damage, but this is my chance because he's not going to have an arsenal, and he's going to be flipping 6 more Shackles. You also need to make use of that Tunic whenever you can, and this was a great time because it's just going to reset. I play this Chane Lake Frigid, pitching my Earth Ice card that I revealed off of the Turn Timber, so he knows that this Chane Lake is going to stick around. It's going to go to 1, and I'm going to arsenal my other Pulse. This is kind of the worst Pulse to have in the matchup, Pulse of Volthaven, because it doesn't block. Best thing you can do with it is slap it in your arsenal, and maybe make a hammer attack for 8 later, or just pitch into a shield or an arcane whenever you need it. Shackle 6 comes around, he banishes playables, a Ghostly Visit, and a Riftbind. So only 2 playables off of Shackle 6. Looks kind of scary because we wanted him to hit a lot so that he would take some blood debt here. It ends up working out in our favor because his turn isn't that scary anyway. He comes in with just the Ghostly Visit and didn't even shackle it. He's going to stay on Shackle 6 for a while here, and I see my hand as an opportunity to keep that Chane Lake around again. I'm going to pause the clip here. If you want to pause the video and see how we keep that Chane Lake Frigid around. That's right. If you just unpaused and said that you're going to reveal to Starvo, attack with that Evergreen pitching an ice card, and then attack with a hammer pitching an ice card, still keeping an arsenal, you're correct. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to reveal this lightning, this ice, and this earth to come in with an Evergreen for 7 with Dominate. He's going to contemplate blocking with the Carrion Husk, and then not. He's going to take it, and then I'm going to come in with a Frosty Hammer. He'll block with Skullcap and Grasp because he ends up lower here after the Evergreen attack hits. I get to end step, keep my Chane Lake Frigid around because of the 2 ice cards, and then arsenal this lightning card. This hand that we draw afterwards looks pretty insane, and we have the chance to be able to do the thing if we pitch this Turn Timber and it turns into exactly a blue. We can do the Fuse Oakenold, and if it's a blue lightning, then we can Captain Planet into it. So we have a little discussion about times you get priority. I did not know that you could respond to the Soul Shackle trigger with Art of War. He flashes in the Art of War to, I believe he chooses Go Again and Banish here. Yep, he chooses Go Again and Banish, and then banishes a Bounding Demigon from hand. His Shackle 6, not all that impressive. It looks like 2 playables once again in Invert and Unhallowed Rites. He is still under the Chane Lake Frigid, and now has 3 cards in hand, Go Again from Art of War, and is still under and still has 1 mana floating. After pondering for a while, he pitches a blue to play a Howl from Beyond, and then casts a Bounding Demigon with Go Again from Art of War. I look at this hand for a little bit, and then activate my Crown of Seeds, drawing into a Turn Timber, and I do fuse it just in case he has something silly that I'm not prepared for. He then opts to attack in with an Unhallowed Rites, putting the Howl that he played on the bottom of the deck, and this one does not have Go Again. He does not activate Shackle because he did not have the mana to. So from this position, he's coming in for 4. I decide that I'm probably just going to block with the 3. I decide that I might have another window in the next turn, I defend for 3, take 1, and end up arsenaling the Oakenold. In hindsight, looking back at this play, I should have just blocked with the Oakenold, knowing that the Chane Lake wasn't going to stick around on my next turn. I could have just attacked with the Icy Hammer, taken the least amount of damage, which was 0, and then continued in the game. This was probably a mistake, but it didn't end up mattering because I did not die by 1. So he takes 2 blood debt to keep that invert and the Riftbind around. He is now at 19, meaning that his Skullcap is back online. We have a yellow and a blue Bounding Demigon in the pitch, as well as a blue Shadow Averser. The end of that deck is going to be quite scary. We decide the order, and he throws them back on the bottom. For my turn, pretty boring. I'm just going to come in with an Ice Hammer and then Arsenal. He decides to block the Ice Hammer with a Carrion Husk, and now I am scared. He doesn't want that Frostbite, and it's the turn that Chane Lake Frigid is coming offline, so this is going to be a pretty big swing, in my opinion. Shackle 6 still, he stays there for a few turns, and it's smart because he wants to fatigue not quite as fast. He's not playing as heavy of a Blood Debt build, it seems like, and in the end of the game, I even find out that he's not playing Eclipse. So it looks like he's just playing a mid-range style Chane, using only the shackles whenever you have to, especially into matchups that can easily fatigue you if you make a misplay or a misstep. So from here, he's going to play a Captain's Call, choosing Go Again, activate Chane, and then swing in with an Enlightened Strike, putting a card on the bottom, and choosing the Draw a Card mode. He's going to do this in order to have Go Again off of the Captain's Call, and then have the most mana going into a bigger play, or try to have the most mana going into a bigger play. I activate Crown of Seeds, and then block it out using Oakenold, Rampart, and Crown. He already shackled, so we're probably not breaking the chain, meaning that unless he plays this Howl from Beyond from Banish, I have already expended my Rampart for the turn. He ends up coming in with a Bounding Demigon. This has Go Again because of the shackle, and then he breaks the chain. This frees back up my shield, and now I have an interesting choice to make. I can block, or I can just use my floating on the shield. He plays a Revel in Runeblood, which is the card I definitely did not want to see here. This is the first time I've seen them from this game. I believe he had not banished any yet at this point. So I was kind of scared. I was like, oh, I'm going to take quite a bit of damage here, and this is also on a Riftbind, so it's going to be a lot of physical and a lot of arcane coming with it. I end up choosing to not have an arsenal for this turn. I pitch to prevent all of the arcane, use my Tunic to pay into the Ram's Head, block for 5, take a couple points of damage, and he inverts me, while he has the chance, and I don't have resources. I go to 15, he's at 15 as well. It's looking pretty even. There's not very many cards left in his deck. I think from this point, I just have to survive long enough to gain back my arsenal and take back the turning point of the game. He flips over the rest of his deck on this shackle. We've got a few Bounding Demigons, that Shadow that we expected, and the Howl that was banished off of that was put back onto the bottom using the Unhallowed Rites. The cards were clipping into each other here, so I tried to zoom in and get them to not clip into each other, while my opponent pitches a blue Bounding Demigon to make a Rune Chant and keep 1 floating. He then proceeds to pitch an invert, going up to 4 resources and then down to 2 to play this Howl. I see him play the Howl, and then he follows it up with just a Bounding Demigon. He starts with the red one, which seems like the most scary, but actually isn't. I pitch to prevent the arcane, and then I'm able to use the shield afterwards. I block with this Heaven's Claw, as well as the shield and the Evergreen to totally block it out, or to take minimal damage here. He then comes in with the Shadow. I opt to just take the 2. He plays an Unhallowed, and I go to review time. It's time for me to look and see what the last cards in his deck are. I review his banish and check for scary cards, trying to figure out what the last cards in his deck are. Eventually, I realize he's playing too many 2-ofs, and I'm not able to completely figure out what they are, but I've narrowed it down to a short range. I don't remember exactly what I narrowed it down to, and I don't want to spend the time in this video to go back through. I don't want to make you sit here in case you aren't listening for that type of content. He plays Howl and Bounding Demigon after I draw back up on my turn without maintaining an arsenal. I block out as much as I can with Rampart Breakground, and Autumn's Touch. He then follows it up with just a vanilla sword, and I prevent as much of that as I can too. I prevent one arcane, and then I believe I opt to use the Crater Fist here to regain my arsenal. Meaning that on my turn, I'm taking my Tunic up to 3. Meaning that on my turn, I'm taking my Tunic up to 3 and arsenaling a card again. In the end, he concedes after I block out that much of the play. There's not much he can do from there. He's pretty well locked out of the game, doesn't have much of a hand, even though he's got me down on life. There's one point here towards the end where I misblocked with a card when I was counting. I believe it was the turn before. Yeah, it's right here. So he attacks with this Unhallowed, and I think about it for a second, and then I look down at my hand and think this is Winter's Grasp. It's not, it's Icy Encounter. I end up blocking and saying that I'm only taking 1, but I should have been taking 2 here. It doesn't end up mattering to the end state of the game, but I do apologize to Allen and his team. I just miscounted. He agreed. I didn't think much of it. I thought that was a Winter's Grasp because we were at the end of the game, and I was just trying not to die. In the end, like I said, he does concede after I'm able to block out the most of his turn and use my equipment efficiently to regain my arsenal and be able to block out Rosetta Thorns for essentially the rest of the game, especially after being able to use Fyendel's Tunic to block or to get my first crown activation for free. That pretty much guarantees that I'm going to be able to recycle and recycle and recycle. The rest of his deck is 2 Bounding Demigons and an Invert, all blue, as well as a Bounding Demigon and Banish and his Carrion Husk. So all he's going to be able to do is loop a vanilla sword over and over again, eventually invert me, but I'm going to have that crown for whenever he does. If you enjoy this type of content, this gameplay review, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to do more of this, and I'm happy to record the rest of my games as we go through this league. Big shout out to Allen and his team. Excellent players, and currently at the time of recording this podcast, they have our team in a headlock. It's 5 people on the team, so it's best of 3 matches, and so far we've played 3 of the matches, and I'm the only one who's defeated my opponent. We still have 2 matches to go. One's happening tonight after this recording happens, and then another one is happening on this weekend sometime, I believe. So anyways, if you enjoy seeing this gameplay recordings, I'm happy to record these with the rest of the matches that I play during this competitive event, this competitive season. It's a round robin style Swiss, so we'll be playing a lot of them, and I'll record all of them. Let me know if you want me to review the rest of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next Thursday.